Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. Pretty excited. It's going to be a Twisted Tuesday, I expect. We've got a couple of videos to show here. We're going to watch some committee and then get into question period when it rolls out. That should be probably about 45 minutes from now. But we've got some very interesting committee here to watch. We're going to do the intro. I'd like to say hello to everybody this afternoon that's joining us. It's early, so I can say hello to Rickety, my man, Captain Kirk, Mr. Pickles. It's great to see you early, Sky Orange. What's up? I saw Mike Malosh up here earlier. I'm pretty sure that I saw, hey, Sylvain Robert, what's up? How are you today? We've got Hippie17, what's up? It's early, so I can say hello to Rickety, my man, Captain Kirk, Mr. Pickles. It's great. Sorry, I've got a couple of computers running. So, good to see you all. We're going to jump into this committee piece right away, and actually, we'll run the intro. We made this intro, and when you're a member, you're going to be in that intro. That'll be part of the fun. Anyhow, I love this song. It gets me pumped up. I'm not going to lie about that. Anyway, let's kick things off here.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The world that works.
The one we call Canadian. Canadians.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
You know I am Canadian. You know I am. You know I am Canadian. I am Canadian.
So we'll drop straight into some committee here. I think that's the
You
plan.
will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. I'd also like to remind all members of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and all comments should be addressed through the chair. And members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or in Zoom. I would also like to welcome you all back from summer, and also acknowledge that today, as chair, I will be standing in the House to table the report, the red dress alert report. So I'm looking forward to doing that right after question period today. So I'm glad we were able to get that done. So moving forward, we have a meeting on committee business. So before we get into more dialogue in relation to committee business, I'd like to raise a couple of points of where we're at, where we've come from, and where we need to be going from my lens. First of all, budget approval. There is a request for budget approval that was circulated to everyone to cover the costs associated with the meeting of July 31st, and the budget is for $5,750. And does the committee approve that budget? Lisa?
Concerned about the budget. I'm not saying that I won't approve it, but nobody else had an opportunity to bring
She's so
witnesses
stunned.
to that
This
meeting.
lady is so
Nobody
weird.
approved that meeting in advance.
Hefner.
And so here we are asked to approve a budget of $5,000 afterwards. I note that a witness was brought from California and had a plane ticket, and yet other committee members weren't advised until an hour before the meeting. So I'd just like to put on the record my concerns about how that all played out. I don't think it's fair to come to the committee and ask us to approve a budget after the fact when nobody knew that meeting was even going to happen.
Witnesses, it wasn't any of the parties other than myself as chair.
Is that okay? Is that what you're saying? That
I'm just acknowledging that. So do we have further discussion before we approve the budget? Yes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors, je dois juste, parce que...
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the cost for airfare, because generally we adopt a budget before a study is begun. And you indicated that you invited the witnesses, so I would like to have some clarification. In the notice that we received, there was one witness 1 hour before the meeting, and then there are expenses of almost $5,000. So I'm wondering whether it was only for the July meeting. Is the budget only for the July meeting? And is this a practice that you think you will continue?
Je veux juste demander.
So we have a point of order.
Sorry, I don't know how to put this on English.
I'm actually doing the same thing, and I'm trying to get the most of French that I can from him. So just point of order.
Donc c'est un rappel au règlement.
Clear how to switch the machines to English.
Push the top to where it.
I'm touching it, I swear.
I'm touching it.
Do you want to sit here? I don't use translation.
So Mark, can you continue in French for just a minute and see if I can...
So I'll just talk about the sunshine and, all of that. Can you hear me now? Is the translation working now? It is. So I just want to gain a better understanding of the concept of meetings. So generally,
Thank you very
we have
much,
witnesses who are
Savage
invited
Silence,
by
and
all of the
welcome to the
parties. The budget
membership,
is
Sky
submitted
Orange.
in advance.
I'm not sure
and
what
it
we're
is
going to bring here,
approved
but
by
we are
the
going to bring
committee.
something.
So
Thank you
I
both
would just
so
like
much.
to understand, because here there is a witness who is there an hour before the meeting. The costs are fairly high. And if I look at witness expenses, yes, from London, that's fine. And then the witness from Los Angeles, and the amount is $3,500. I just want to be sure that, as you've indicated, that you were the one who decided who the witnesses would be. No other parties participated, and you did not submit a budget beforehand for approval. That is not standard practice, and so I want to know whether this committee will continue to act in that manner.
Moving forward, it's best practice for me to communicate more efficiently with everyone. And if I could pass it to the clerk for any further, to handle if we need further discussion. But I think that, to answer your question, agree. We could move forward in a different way. Yeah. Sonia?
Same point. I just want to share my frustration to Madam Chair, because I'm in the FIVO committee from 9 years. Never happened that the other party didn't get chance to submit the witnesses. As a chair, this is not fair for us, and it never happened before. And please, next time, don't do this. And thank you.
No, duly noted. Thank you. Lisa?
I just want to clarify, Chair, because you're talking today like you didn't know that it was inappropriate to call a meeting without informing the witnesses, and with calling witnesses without informing committee members. So is that your contention, that you didn't know that was an inappropriate way to handle a committee? Are you just learning this now?
No, it was an emergency meeting, and I acted swiftly on a very emergent topic, hence the meeting. Yep.
Madam Chair, in the emergency meeting, all committees are present, all members are present. If it's emergency meeting, we should say our views too from our witnesses. How come we didn't get chance to submit the paper? Even though it's emergency meeting, we have lots of emergency meeting in COVID time and all the time, but never happened what happened in that time.
Appreciate your feedback, and more consensus from different witnesses would only enhance the conversation next time.
Alors, si je Madame la Présidente,
Oui,
alors si je comprends bien,
So if I understand correctly, an emergency meeting is generally one of 4, and we're used to it. I think that there were 106.4s over the summer emergency meetings, and we heard it in 2000. We had an emergency meeting in July. In 2022, there was a 2-hour meeting pursuant to Article 106.4. So really, if that had been indicated, then yes, as we've heard, all parties have a chance to propose witnesses. The chair also has the ability to speak, and there's a 5-day delay. So I don't think this was a parliamentary emergency. It was simply a meeting that you called. I say it with respect. I want to understand your way of moving ahead. But I have to say that really, when there is a 106.4, all parliamentarians can prepare for the witnesses, know who the witnesses are going to be as well, and have a list of names to ensure that all political parties are in the conversation. So it was an emergency meeting determined to be so by you, not a 106.4. And so I think that really I want to know how this committee is going to proceed. This is a committee that has been chaired by Conservatives for a very long time, ever since I came onto the committee. So yes, I appreciate that we're discussing the budget today so that we can discuss that.
I also have your hand up, but I would like to acknowledge that as chair, it certainly is my prerogative to call the meeting. I did address each steering committee member prior to the meeting. And lastly, this is not unique in all committees. Nonetheless, Anna, chair is yours.
I think what we have to determine here is the issue that we all face, and that is the importance of how, as a Status of Women Committee, we are going to come together and justify the violence that is occurring in our country. It's out of control. We've heard from different police officers, different chief of polices. I think we need to get back to the business at hand, and that is how can we work together so that we can improve the safety of all women everywhere.
And also, I just want to acknowledge, while I was doing my housekeeping, the initial person on the floor was Michelle Ferrari, but I still have some housekeeping that I want to continue before we... Is there any more further discussion on the budget approval before I move forward on the other items that I want to handle? Mark?
Sorry, can you explain what you mean that Michelle was the person? So
certainly, when I first started my remarks at the onset of the meeting, I was going through the explanation of the translation and what have you. Michelle Ferrari did have her hand up. I acknowledged her, but then went back to the speaking notes and acknowledged to her that I would go back to her. But we're going. I've allowed some discretion. I'm talking about the budget, so I just want to acknowledge that if we can deal with that of the budget, and then I want to explain more where we're at with coercive control and witnesses and what have you for Wednesday. That would be great. Yes, Leah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little concerned about the process. Okay, I think, the budgets, from my experience being on committee, we've always worked in a really collegial way to do these things in advance. Because if it's done after the fact, sitting around the room, now I'm beholden to approve something that I wasn't involved in the first place. I'm not saying I have a problem with this budget, but maybe there will be a time when I do have problems with the budget. And I don't want to be put in a position with taxpayer dollars that if I don't approve a budget, I look like I'm counter an issue. Okay? I'm not saying I'm against this budget. I'm saying I'm against the process. I also didn't know we were at a point in the meeting when it was called to order that people were raising hands. So again, I have a concern with the process. We have worked really well as a committee, certainly under Karen Vecchio. She always made sure that the committee was happened in a really respectful manner. And part of it was that she was fierce about process, including with me. I didn't always benefit from process. And I just want to get back to process. You brought up the coercive control study. That is, we're talking about a crisis of violence against women. That's part of that violence. And every time we stall, going into an election, particularly I'm concerned about process. For folks in my riding, where we have record rates of violence, that means somebody's going to die, and nobody in this house is going to fight for them. So I want to make sure that we are good on process, that we are following rules, and that we rise above partisan games and lift up the human rights and safety of women and diverse gendered folks in this country without question or qualification or motive. And so that's what I'm hoping, that we can get back to committee in a good way, because lives are on the line. Thank you, Chair.
Leila?
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank you for having me here as a guest today. With that and the conversation we've had, I'd like to move a motion to approve the budget as presented by the Chair.
Okay. To that motion, Mark?
Yeah, I just want. So I just wanted to clarify, following up on what Leah said, and you said you acknowledged Ms. Ferreri, but is there anybody else on the list? I just want to clarify before we move, because the last time there was a lot of confusion on that part. So I just want to make sure that if there is other people acknowledged.
Leila, Anna, and Adrienne.
I had my hand at the same time as Michelle.
So you've acknowledged
You're
the
not
three.
even looking at the side of the room.
Okay, well, duly noted. I will ensure that it's there. Yeah.
So can you repeat that, please?
Leila, Anna, Adrienne, and I'm sorry, Lisa. Where did you?
I had my hand at the same time as Michelle. It was sitting here when you opened the meeting, and we both had our hands up at the same time, but
Okay,
you
well,
did not even look at this side of the room.
Okay, well, I'll add you at this point after Adrienne.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did put forward a motion, and so if I could ask that perhaps we have conversation on the motion at hand and have a vote on it, and then we can, from there, go back to any kind of conversation on other pieces.
We have a motion to approve the budget.
The question was to approve.
All in favor of approving the budget? Okay. Thank you. So the budget approval has been circulated and approved for $5,750.
Madam Chair, I just want to say something.
Okay, so if we're going to be following the list,
Point
then
of order. Point of order.
Thank you. Yeah.
Madam Chair, Michelle did the hands up. Same thing Lisa did, and then after that, how come? Can you repeat the order of speaking, please?
At this point, we have Leila, who has just finished, Anna, Adrienne, Lisa, and I'll add you if you'd like to as well.
That when you start the meeting, and then Michelle and then Lisa put the hands up same time.
Okay.
So
I missed Lisa, and I'm mindful of that now, and I will be sure to take a full scope of the room.
thank you.
Okay, at this point also, with regards to coercive behavior study, I'd like to acknowledge where we're at. We have had 2.5 meetings of witness testimony so far. The study motion adopted by the committee on November 27th of 2023 notes that the committee hold at least 6 meetings for this study. Therefore, at this point, we have 3.5 meetings to fit into the schedule moving forward. And before the study wraps up, the committee will need to decide which study it wants to pursue this fall. Currently, we have the study on sexual violence against women and girls as a weapon of war. There was a motion that called for 4 meetings. As well, we have a study on breast cancer screening for women aged 40. The motion called for a meeting of, or a max of 4 meetings. Lisa?
Thank you. Typically in this committee, we've handled all of this organization in subcommittee, and I understand that was the plan for today, was a subcommittee meeting where everybody in camera would go over the studies, finish course of control, and decide what we're going to study next. And at the last minute, again, this...
Point of order, Lisa.
It's about procedure. It is about procedure. And the procedure is... all of around this table, people had decided we were going to have a subcommittee meeting today, and unilaterally you decided we were going to be in public and debating things around the table. So instead of a conversation that was supposed to be had in camera among the subcommittee, we're having this conversation in public amongst all of us. And I don't think it's the right process. This is not how we've done this committee.
I found it was important to have a conversation of this scope in public, and I thought we would have consensus and opinions from all of us. That was my thought. Leah, to that point of order?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think, Chair, we've done a lot of good work together. I think usually, certainly making assumptions that you thought we would, I think that goes back to process. What is the process? We've had a process, and in our process, we have discussed studies, very collegially, in fact, in subcommittees. And part of the reason why I think, especially as somebody who only has one seat at this table, so I don't have a lot of power on this table, I'm not delusional, is to make sure that we weren't playing partisan games and we were putting forward the best studies that we could. I know that in the subcommittee, because of the subcommittees, I was able to work with all the parties with support in solidarity with women and diverse gender people, in solidarity, knowing this is the only place in the House of Commons that actually focuses on women's issues. I got the red dress study, and I also got the study connecting increased violence against Indigenous women and girls and resource extraction. And that was agreed on across all party lines, and we have always done that. We don't have vicious debates in subcommittee. We look at the issues of the day and we discuss it. And part of the reason I think it's worked is because of process. Clearly, going forward with different processes doesn't seem to be working. And I know who suffers for that. That is the people that we're fighting for. So this is very much on a point of order. I question if our priority is shifting. I don't want to make assumptions. I do know what we're going into, from fighting for women across party lines in a nonpartisan way and diverse gendered people, or getting ready for an upcoming election. I think this committee, out of all the committees, we could actually get something done. We got 9 studies done. Those studies have saved lives, and I'm speaking to you as a human being, because I know you're a good human being, that your role is critical in the process to make sure we can ensure that those things keep happening. Thank you, Chair.
On that point of order, Leila?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to, perhaps we could consult the clerk on this, because my understanding from the Green Book that guides where the process is that having these kinds of conversations is allowable in both a closed meeting in camera or in an open meeting, as is the space. And so perhaps the clerk can clarify that this is an allowable way of having these conversations.
Sonia? On that point of order?
Yes, on the same point of order, Madam Chair. The subcommittee has been scheduled with you consult all the vice chairs. and the members have expressed this is the preference to go. Can you explain why it's changed on the last minute when you consult the vice chairs and subcommittee meetings was scheduled?
I know that we're assuming that we're speaking on the point of order, but we have to make sure that we keep our points of order as structured as possible, as good as possible. But to answer your question,
I want the explanation, like, because in camera, this is the same thing, because we were doing our procedure in subcommittee in the past. So you consult the vice chairs, and then we schedule subcommittee, and then it got cancelled without consultation with anyone. So I just want rational for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. With that, every style of every chair will do things a little bit differently. I'm hearing every single thing that all of you are saying, but I thought it was prudent of us to have a couple more motions and topics and ideas on the table before we went to a steering committee with just a few of us. I know I changed from Thursday to Friday with my dialogue with all of you, but then as soon as I did do that, I did reach out to all the vice chairs to give them a heads up that that was my intention. So there was no malicious intent here. But nonetheless, I think it's healthy, and as a community around the table, we can solve and talk about the issues at hand and get motions on the table that will allow for a productive fall in this committee. To the same point of order.
I appreciate my friend Leila Goodrich's input. I don't think it's necessary to consult the clerk. The point is not whether it's allowed. The point is committee practice. And I think you've heard around this table how well this committee has worked over the past 8-9 years. And we're seeing that collapse. And so the point is not whether it's something that's allowed, but whether it's the practice of this committee and what has worked well on this committee. And that is what we're speaking out against. The changes are not, you can't expect collaboration without talking to anyone. You can't expect that you're going to have consensus if you haven't bothered to talk to anyone else.
Adrienne? Thank you. Thank you.
Présidente, j'avais demandé
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had asked to take the floor earlier to add something. It was after what Leila said earlier about a course of control, but I'll come back to that. But the back and forth that we've had on the budget and on the last-minute change from a subcommittee meeting to a more general committee meeting, I really do think, Madam Chair, that you should consult us more often. On the budget, we should have been consulted regarding what happened over the summer, and for the last-minute change, I had answered by email that I was okay with a change from, or rather, that I answered you by email to say that I actually wasn't in agreement with having a public meeting rather than a subcommittee meeting. So really, I think that it's important to say that when it comes to changes that have to do with the way that the committee does its business, yes, you should reach out by email and people can send their replies. That you have my full support for that. But when it comes to my point that I wanted to make on coercive control, I'll come back to it now. And so the idea for that comes from a Québec Solidaire member that worked on the report Rebuilding Confidence. Then I had some talks with the Parti québécois. The former minister for the status of women is my riding neighbor in Quebec. And this summer, I met Liberal members who know about the recommendations of that report, Rebuilding Confidence. And I keep two things with me. One, in Quebec, we understood that when it comes to violence against women, partisanship has no place there. There has to be all parties around the table. And then in Quebec, it is unanimous when it comes to femicide. Quebec is asking us to act and to look at coercive control, and that is something that goes beyond partisan borders as well. It is urgent. So we will have to look at the other studies and how things go. We can talk about that. But as of Wednesday, we have a very important study to finish. And I'm not saying that it isn't close to my heart. The reason that I'm here is precisely because it is very, very close to my heart. But I don't want to participate in the partisan debate with regard to the lack of following procedure or not over the summer. Because really, this study, the study on coercive control, is one that was requested by the people and that we also saw at the National Assembly in Quebec. So please let us be as constructive as possible. And Chair, I would like to remind you that I am available to work with you, to cooperate with you. You know how to get in touch with me. And I would say, please do, with respect, so that we can make this cause advance, because we do not want the victims of violence to be victims of partisanship in this committee.
Okay, so we do have 3.5 meetings remaining on coercive control. We have witnesses planned for Wednesday. I do also acknowledge that I have a few more people that have their hands up. We're no longer speaking to the points of order, so I've just been adding people's names. So do you want? Can I finish my remarks, or can we just? Or do you want to jump into the following comments? I'm going to finish what I would like to get in with.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I've had my hand up for quite a while now, and if everybody else got their turn to speak to the point of order, I would like it as well.
On the point of order? Okay. Well, we were. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would like to add my voice, first of all, to just let you know that I think that the way that it's been run, this committee has been run ever since, the beginning of the summer has been troubling for sure, because this was a collegial committee, and this was a committee where everybody did get along and everybody got work done, and we had so many studies completed during the time that we were on this committee, and it's really unfortunate to see that things are being almost done as a dictatorship at this point. You know, like the fact that a meeting was called in the middle of the summer, we were all brought back. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there. But it was a $5,000 meeting, and that's, Canadian tax dollars are paying for that meeting that was called back in the middle of the summer.
Every employee in Nova Scotia.
Witnesses could be flown in from the United States. And unfortunately, we didn't get much out of that meeting, but it's just very unfortunate. And the fact that this was supposed to be a subcommittee meeting, which is something that's been done in the past, people had scheduled their times in order to be there for the subcommittee and had made sure that they had, we had meetings ourselves, pre-committee meetings, to make sure that we were able to put forward studies that we wanted to make sure we were going to see happen, the orders of things and all of that. And it was just completely sidelined last minute so that we can have a meeting and discuss this in person all together. I just
been more
it's
than
very sad.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think I've been more than generous with the.
It's just disappointing, and I'm hoping that we can move
point
forward.
of order.
I'm hoping we can move forward in a more positive way going forward.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right, gang, we're going to cross over to the question period now. I think, question period hasn't started. It doesn't start for another 12 minutes, but they do their statements here at the beginning, and sometimes there's some interesting pieces, so we're going to jump into that. Got it going right here, I think.
We were joined by retired police officer Blair Vintner.
The age of 78. A great photographer, Michel immortalized the magnificent landscapes of the lower St. Lawrence region for over 45 years. On foot or by bike, from Montjoly to Matapédia, nothing escaped the camera of this great artist. Through his lens, he became a symbol of Quebec's deep attachment to their regions and their nation. He showed the world the beauty of Eastern Quebec, and for that we are all very grateful and proud. In fact, his final gift was to bequeath his treasure trove of over 15,000 works to the Library and National Archives of Quebec, wonderfully enriching our regional Quebec cultural heritage. Adieu, Michel Dompierre, and thank you for everything. The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to be part of a government that understands the importance of supporting our tourism businesses and is taking action. Again this summer, in my riding of Châteauguay-Lacolle, soon to be Châteauguay-les-Jardins de Naperville, I was able to see just how much the federal government support is making a difference, enabling businesses like Parc Safari and Heritage St. Bernard to improve their service offering and attract a wider and more diversified clientele from outside the region, the province, and even the country. I would also like to highlight the excellent work of Parc Safari and Heritage St. Bernard, these teams, the two most important tourist attractions in the Monterey region. Through their initiatives, know-how, and commitment, they help us to shine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's up, Sheila? Good to see you. How are you today?
The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberal, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are now working harder and longer to bring home less, if they can afford a home at all. Their purchasing power is shot, and many live in fear of crime and chaos. Our country, Mr. Speaker, was built on the backs of the early riser, the factory workers, soldiers, nurses, bakers, servers, and night shift workers that drive Main Street through their diligent hard work. It is their tax dollars earned through blood, sweat, and tears that pays for this government's out-of-control spending. But there is hope on the horizon, Mr. Speaker, a Canada where hard work is rewarded, where there's affordable food and housing in a safe neighbourhood, where everyone gets a fair shot at a good life. Mr. Speaker, a common-sense Conservative government will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Yay! Bravo!
The honourable member from Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize the passing of my good friend Alan Andrews, also known as the Hockey Prof. As the founder of Andrews Hockey Growth Programs, Alan has impacted the lives of countless athletes around the world. Generations have benefited from his wisdom both on and off the ice and through his mentoring. His innovative curriculum has been emulated across the country and beyond. It was his unique combination of commitment to professional hockey development and personal human development that made Andrews Hockey Growth Program successful. Numerous NHL players benefit from the program, including Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Richards, and Adam McQuaid, to name a few. His many accomplishments earned him the Order of Canada in 2017, and he was later inducted in the PEI Sports Hall of Fame. I'd like to extend my condolences to his wife, Lois, and family for their loss of Alan, and thank Alan for his immeasurable contribution to the sport of hockey and personal development of many young, inspiring athletes. We will continue to dream big, Al.
The honourable member from Willowdale.
I rise today to commemorate Mahsa Jina Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish-Iranian woman who was tragically killed by the Iranian regime 2 years ago. Mahsa's tragic death lit a fire of resistance across Iran and galvanized support around the world. Let me assure you that the torch of opposing gender apartheid continues to shine bright within Iran. As on other occasions in the last 2 years, large demonstrations in support of the Women Life Freedom movement took place across Canada in the last few days. I'm proud to state that more than any other country, our government has listened to the demands of protesters. Canada has revised a variety of policies to support courageous Iranians in their just cause. But our work is not done. We need to continue to support the democratic aspirations of the courageous people of Iran. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Toronto, St. Paul's.
Thank you to the great people of Toronto, St. Paul's for putting your trust in me and standing up to be counted. Thank you to my daughters, Lee and Charlotte, for your support in making my life easy. Special thanks to my campaign team led by the Amanda Philp, with Sadaf Rastami, Harrison Rotman, and a nationwide list of volunteers. Finally, without the encouragement of my partner, Andrea, none of this would have been possible. We have shown what is possible. Toronto St. Paul's is just the beginning of Canadians choosing common sense. After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. Canadians know this Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Canadians know the NDP leader is in it for his pension, while Canadians pay the price of the costly NDP Liberal policies. Only common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
I'm going to ask all honourable members, please, while members are making their very special Standing Order 31 statements, that we do not interrupt them. They use this for an opportunity to reach the people in their own homes, and I know everyone will want to extend this courtesy to each other. The honourable member from Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, today we join millions around the world in celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival, also known as the Moon Festival or Mooncake Festival. Not only is it an important celebration in Chinese culture, but similar celebrations are held by Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, and other Asian communities. This special day brings together family and friends. Thousands of people in Scarborough Agincourt will be celebrating by lighting beautiful lanterns and sharing delicious mooncakes, which symbolize unity, gratitude, and prosperity. I can confirm that our local retailers are always well stocked to meet the demand. Come support our local businesses. I wish everyone a joyful and peaceful Mid-Autumn Festival. 中秋节快乐，月圆中秋平安健康。Oh, thank you.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quebecers are still wondering what the Bloc is for. It's Bloc that has propped up this Liberal Prime Minister for more than 200 votes. It is the most centralizing government in our history. There's no interest in the Bloc or the Quebecers giving them a blank check. The Prime Minister says one thing, Bloc says one thing rather and does another. They keep propping up this Liberal Prime Minister, and this coalition voted to add 100,000 new public servants, more spending than ever, more public servants than ever, more scandals than ever, with Quebec's money, our money. Who does the Bloc serve? The Liberal Prime Minister. And what does the Bloc serve? Unfortunately, not Quebecers. The only party that can defend Quebecers is the Conservative Party of Canada, the Common Sense Party.
The honourable member from Lakeland.
After 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, and time's up. The NDP leader claimed he'd be an opposition voice, but promptly hooked up to help the Liberal Prime Minister hike taxes, food costs, double housing costs, and unleash crime and chaos in once safe Canadian streets. That's the definition of a sellout of workers, voters, and communities everywhere. Their own policies make it so Canadians can't afford to house, heat, feed, and drive themselves. So the truth is that NDP sellout supported the Liberal Prime Minister every way and every day to hike carbon taxes by 300% all the way up to 61 cents a litre. The NDP Liberal carbon tax vandalizes small businesses and charities. In Lakeland, the Two Hills Ag Society is just one example, a non-profit forced to pay over $18,000 in just 6 months on top of the cost of power. The choice is clear. The NDP Liberal Bloc coalition who tax your food, punish your work, take your money, hike your rent, risk your homes, or common sense Conservatives that'll axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. So Canadians need a carbon tax election now.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate and honour the life of Mathieu Miljour, a man who touched the hearts of all who knew him. A former president and general manager of the Vaudreuil-Soulanges Chamber of Commerce, Mathieu worked tirelessly to support local entrepreneurs and foster growth
Where was Jagmeet yesterday? Did anybody notice that? Because, like, I had Mr. Pickle send me a video of Jagmeet being right there, like, on Parliament Hill. He's a loser.
For his friends and family, especially his 2 children. Although his time with us was far too short, his impact was enormous. In his memory, let us think of the joy, kindness, and passion he brought to the world. Rest in peace, our dear friend Mathieu.
The honourable member from Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Elmwood, Transcona have spoken. And they saw right through the phony working class cosplay of the Conservatives and elected Leela Dance, a strong new Democrat who stands up for workers and their families. Because Conservatives are no friends of workers, their leader can borrow a hard hat and pretend like he's in it for the working class, but he's never spent a second when they needed it most on the picket lines. In fact, Conservatives voted 8 times against anti-scab legislation to help out the big bosses. They'll always cut deep and backstab fast, leaving workers behind. But the people of Elmwood Transcona, they chose hope and Leela Dance and the NDP over Conservative fears and cuts. To the big bosses and the CEOs, your time is up because it's the people's time.
That green is all wound up. That green is all wound
Order. Order. Colleagues, j'aimerais que tout le monde...
I would like everyone to continue their discussions elsewhere during statements by members. It's important for members to present their statements, and everyone should leave the person take the floor. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. The actress Marilyn Castingon-Gay did us proud at the Gémeaux Awards last Sunday. We've already known her for her various talents in a wide variety of roles, alongside some of the biggest names in theatre, film, and series. Now she's part of the prestigious club of great Quebec actresses, winning the Best Award for lead actress in a drama series for her illustrious character of Huguette Delisle, a high-caliber housewife and criminal in the popular Quebec series C'est comme ça que je t'aime. What an actress and what a talented woman. Bravo, Marlene. And she's also from Marsouin. Bravo, yes, she is from Île-aux-Coudres. Forgive my pride, but in my region, like all of Quebec, is very proud of Marilyn Castonguay. Congratulations to my little cousin from the Garcette line of Cap à la Branche. We are all so proud of you.
Order. The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Conflict of interest Carbon Tax Carney has officially joined the corrupt Liberal government as the de facto finance minister, here to ram the Davos agenda down the throats of Canadians. This global elite jet sets around the world, claiming the carbon tax scam is a global example that no one should be exempt from, including Atlantic Canadians. He sits on boards of multinational corporations with interests for foreign oil, for foreign governments, opposing Canada's good, clean, responsible oil and gas. The Prime Minister has shielded him from Canadian disclosure laws by making him an advisor instead of replacing this lame duck finance minister. Carbon Tax Carney is here for Carbon Tax Carney, here for all the power and money and none of the accountability. He could care less about Canadians who can't afford to feed, heat, or house themselves. Common sense Conservatives are calling on the Prime Minister to force Carbon Tax Carney to be sworn in as a public office holder, so he has to follow Canada's conflict of interest laws. Time to come clean. Conflict of interest, Carbon Tax Carney.
The honourable member from Sydney, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, on September 17, 1999, Donald Marshall Jr. stood victorious in his case that affirmed the Mi'kmaq had a treaty right to sell fish according to the terms of the peace and friendship treaties. This historic case changed the economic future for the Mi'kmaq. Not only could treaties be used to survive, but now they were able to thrive. Thousands of Mi'kmaq jobs have been created within the fisheries, allowing Mi'kmaq to become major players within the Atlantic fisheries. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we have a long way to go in full implementation of the Mi'kmaq treaties, but we continue to work with Mi'kmaq communities to ensure they can exercise their right to a living while balancing conservation and safety. We remember the Marshall case as a turning point for the Mi'kmaq and how it cemented the legacy of Donald Marshall Jr. as a hero for our people. Today, I remember my late friend Junior and honor all those who continue to advocate for their treaty rights moving forward. Walaliek, thank you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition de la chef de l'opposition.
Les électeurs dans des châteaux forts.
Voters in Liberal strongholds in Toronto and Montreal have rendered their verdict. This Prime Minister, after 9 years, is not worth the cost. After 9 years of this Bloc Liberal government, we've seen the greatest expansion in the federal government in history, the most expensive centralizing government, including when it comes to the cost of housing and groceries in Quebec. How can the Bloc keep this government in power when it's so bad for Quebec? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'm so happy to have the opportunity to answer a question that has to do with the Canadian economy, because it gives me the opportunity to celebrate some good news that we got this morning. Inflation was 2%. And that's back to pre-pandemic levels. It's such good news for our country. Conservatives should be celebrating that. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure people who are waiting on waiting lists for food banks or lineups for food banks, or who are living in camps or homeless shelters, they'll be celebrating today. They'll really be celebrating the fact that after the highest inflation in 40 years, prices are still going up. They're not going back down. So the question is, why does the Bloc want to keep the most centralizing, expensive government in power when they have no respect for Quebec's jurisdiction or for Quebecers? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is showing once again that he's incompetent when it comes to the economy. The fact is that the 2% level is where Canada was before the pandemic. The fact is that since the beginning of this year, inflation was within the Bank of Canada's target range. The fact is that for 19 months now, wages have outstripped inflation. But Conservatives just want bad news for Canadians.
Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians in the former Liberal strongholds of Toronto and Montreal have now given their verdict. After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Taxes up, costs up, crimes up, time's up. Mr. Speaker, isn't it time for Canadians to have a chance to render their verdict right across the country, electing a common-sense Conservative government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
Ask members, especially members on the far side of the House, to please not to take the microphone until they're recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I am so glad to have the chance to talk about the economy. That is because today we had good news for Canadians. Inflation is back down to where it was before COVID hit. Inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range this whole year. Wages have outpaced inflation for 19 months in a row. But the Conservatives don't want to talk about it. They are so weak and spiteful that for them, good news for Canadians is bad news that they want to ignore.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, this incompetent finance minister would tell you that you should celebrate that after prices rising faster than at any time in 40 years, they continue to rise, just not as quickly. I'm sure the people living in tent encampments, or the record-smashing 2 million people lined up at food banks, or the 1 in 4 kids going to school hungry after 9 years of this government will be celebrating. But what we now find out is that it's worse than we thought. According to a document just released, the government's second carbon tax will cost $9 billion in lost GDP. Why won't we have a carbon tax election to decide?
The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all know why the Conservatives are so panicked about an election. It's because they can see that the economic news is good. They can see that we are now back to exactly where we were before COVID hit. They can see the Bank of Canada has lowered interest rates 3 times in a row, and wages have been ahead of inflation for 19 months. That's good news for Canadians. It's bad news for Conservatives.
And once again, I apologize. Normally, I would indicate out of respect to all members by saying the Honourable, and I forgot to do that in this case. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The bad news is we now have 1,800 homeless encampments in Ontario. 35 in Halifax alone. 2 million Canadians lined up at food banks after 9 years of NDP Liberal government. And now that we learn that on top of the $25 billion annual hit of the first carbon tax to our GDP, the second carbon tax will subtract another $9 billion a year. Over $35 billion in lost GDP. That's almost $2,000 per family. Why won't this costly NDP Liberal government allow Canadians to vote on the carbon tax?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I am so glad to have the chance to talk about housing because there is more good news Canadians should know about. And that is that we have extended to 30 years amortizations for all first-time home buyers. That means more young Canadians can buy that first home and afford that mortgage. We've extended to 30 years amortizations for all new homes. That's to encourage what we know we all need, more homes built faster. But these weak and spiteful Conservatives cannot celebrate good news for Canadians because it's bad news for their partisan interests.
Yes. I kind of hope that some of the other ministers from the corrupt Liberal cupboard.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be able to answer the question from the Leader of the Opposition, but I'll answer this way. 4th place in La Salle et Maire Verdun. So we're still working on the seniors file and doing so well that we're going to have to make room for one more seat on our benches. Is this government in favor of C-319, and will they ensure that this bill, which everyone in the House voted for, makes it all the way through? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
What's up, Brent? Thank you so much,
Mr. Speaker,
you're my man.
I'd like to thank my colleague for that question. Our government understands the importance of supporting our seniors, and that's what we've done, and what we've done from the outset. That's what we did after 10 years of the Conservatives, who punished our seniors. That's why we added supports for our seniors, especially for the most vulnerable seniors, as was the right thing to do. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. C-319 is a block bill that would eliminate the discrimination in the OAS for seniors aged 65 to 74 and those 75 and over. And instead of allowing for $5,000 to $6,000 in wages without losing the GIS. At committee, all parties voted in favor of our bill. Now, will the government ensure that this bill gets implemented because it requires a royal recommendation? Will the Liberals give that recommendation and support seniors, yes or no? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge clearly that the oldest seniors, those at 75 and over, have higher costs and are more vulnerable. That is why we added support for them. And I share with the Bloc a concern for our seniors, and that's why I would ask the Bloc to support us when it comes to dental care. That's an important program for all Quebecers, and especially for vulnerable seniors. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The Liberals have let people down again and again, and they are done. It's clear from the results of the election last night. The Liberals are done. Maybe it's because they keep on teaming up with the Conservatives to let greedy CEOs continue to rip off Canadians. In fact, inflation numbers show that grocery greed has driven up the food prices more than 21% in the past 3 years. Why did the Liberals team up with the Conservatives to protect greedy CEOs from a price cap on food essentials?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the NDP and indeed all members of this House will set partisanship aside for one moment to congratulate Canadians at the light at the end of the tunnel, at the fact that after an extremely challenging time with COVID and its economic aftermath, inflation is back to where it was before COVID first hit. When it comes to taxes, we believe that those who have the most capacity should pay their fair share, and we've acted on that.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The Liberals have continued to team up with the Conservatives to let grocery greed drive up the price of food, and that's got to stop.
Yesterday, it became clear that people are finished with the Liberals. It's because they worked with the Conservatives to allow real estate giants hike rents by over 20%. Why do the Liberals keep teaming up with the Conservatives and allowing these giants rip people off? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
I don't think anybody listening to Question Period today, or frankly any day, imagines that the Liberals are teaming up with the Conservatives. Or that we agree with them about very much at all. They are the party of privilege and austerity. We are the party of people. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we have asked those at the very top to pay their fair share so that we can support Canada and Canadians.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
It's day 2 in the House as the first female finance minister, again, is being publicly humiliated by the fake feminist prime minister. What's worse is that she's being replaced by an unelected man outside of her own caucus who her boss is now shielding from conflict of interest laws that allow him to take her job and keep his money. A man who works against our resource sector, who exports jobs to China while championing higher carbon taxes on heating and eating for Canadians. Why won't the finance minister talk to her boss about ending the personal attacks on her own credibility?
I'm a big
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I am so glad to have the chance to talk about feminism because I know what a feminist government looks like. A feminist government builds the first national system of early learning and childcare. A feminist government makes contraceptives free, and a feminist government ensures that every single woman in Canada has full control over her body. Until the Conservatives stand up for that, they have no right to talk about it.
Well done. The honourable member from Thornhill.
Fake feminist prime minister throws his finance minister under the bus with all the other ministers. The real record of this finance minister is record smashing 1 million people visiting a food bank in her province. In Ontario, 1 in 4 Canadians living in poverty. Canadians now spend more in taxes than they do on housing, on food, and on clothes combined. No wonder they're putting the training wheels back on for her. She can tell that to the Prime Minister.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I've stood up to Trump, and I have stood up to Putin. Juvenile playground insults from the wannabe MAGA maple syrup conservatives do not frighten me at all. But what I think is really interesting is that they don't actually want to talk about the economy. And that's because good economic news for Canadians is bad news for them. How pathetic that they put their own partisan interest first.
I don't think many of us really care for Chrystia Freeland around here, but she is on fire.
The honourable member from Haldimand, Norfolk.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and now time is up. This self-proclaimed feminist prime minister has repeatedly shoved aside strong women who have stood up to him. Now the prime minister is replacing the first ever female finance minister with an unelected Mark Carbon Tax Carney. Why is this finance minister allowing herself to be publicly humiliated in this manner?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is a bit rich to hear the member of the Conservative Party pretend to care about feminism when their own leader was using misogynistic hashtags on their videos to attract men who hate women. Mr. Speaker, it was anything but feminist when they bring forward backdoor legislation to ban abortion and to take away women's right to choose their own rights, Mr. Speaker, or when they all voted against increased funding to combat gender-based violence or to support survivors. Mr. Speaker, their leader doesn't care about women or equality. He only cares about himself.
The honourable member from Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, it's so sad. They're not even allowing the finance minister to answer because they all...
Order! Order! The honourable member from Haldimand, Norfolk, from the top, please.
From the top? Mr. Speaker, they're not even allowing the finance minister to answer her own questions. because they all know that the carbon tax is a failure. Canadians are suffering. There are over 1,800 homeless encampments in Ontario alone. 26% of Canadians are saying that they are considering leaving the country because it is too expensive. A single mother in Kingston reported paying 100% of her income in rent. Will this finance minister admit that the Prime Minister has lost confidence in her and Canadians have lost confidence in this government?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives keep talking about women, but they don't support policies that support women. Why are they against affordable childcare? If they care about that single mother, they should be supporting affordable childcare. Mr. Speaker, if they care about women's economic freedom, they should be supporting childcare. If they care about women's rights, they should be supporting a woman's right to choose. The real fake feminists, Mr. Speaker, are the people who sit on that side of the aisle.
The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. This Prime Minister's new de facto finance minister, Carbon Tax Carney, has massive conflicts of interest, including multiple foreign investment firms. Canadians don't know how much he personally stands to profit from the advice that he's giving to the Prime Minister. It's more blatant corruption from this NDP Liberal government. So will the Prime Minister simply have Carbon Tax Carney sworn in as a public office holder so that the full extent of Canada's disclosure laws apply to him too?
Very, very good point.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives, we do believe in listening to experts from across the country. But let's talk about where the Conservatives get their ideas. The Conservative leader gets his advice on helping Canadians with their grocery bills from a Loblaws lobbyist. He gets his advice on Ukraine from Elon Musk and from Tucker Carlson. And he has courted the support of misogynists and cozied up to the far right. Those are the advisors Canadians should be really concerned about.
The honourable member from Regina Capel has stood in this place and understands the importance of calling members to order so that those who do have the floor have the opportunity to address the House. The honourable member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
It's absolutely absurd to hear the finance minister give anyone lessons about who they're taking advice from. Arch-liberal elitist Mark Carney. This guy has more conflicts than the twice guilty and convicted Prime Minister of their party. And they're letting Carbon Tax Carney keep all the money and all the power by covering up his massive conflicts of interest while giving away that finance minister's job. He makes millions from foreign investment firms, and now he's advising the Prime Minister. So why is the Prime Minister letting Carbon Tax Carney keep the money and the power and serving as the real finance minister?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, it's absolutely shameful what the Conservatives are doing. When there is a Canadian who doesn't agree with their vision for Canada, what do? Attack them. Whether it's anybody who doesn't agree with what the Conservatives do, the only thing they know how to do is denigrate that person. Mr. Speaker, we should be able to disagree without being disagreeable. We should be able to hear advice from a whole wide range of actors without attacking their character and bringing down fellow Canadians. They should be ashamed of their actions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very good.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to bring something to the government's attention, something that won't happen. the Bloc will not agree to tolerating encroachment on Quebec's jurisdiction in exchange for this or that. That won't happen. The Liberal government has to be consistent. They should implement a bill that they voted for. It's got to be one of two ways. Either they get the NDP to support them or they'll pay the price. The Honourable Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, speaking of clarity, will the leader of the Bloc Québécois clarify what exactly he said or would say to hundreds of thousands of Quebecers who today benefit from free dental care that he voted against? The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. It's not really clear what was voted against or in favor of. I've never voted in favor of an intrusion on Quebec's jurisdiction. The Liberals have a block bill now in their hands. All it takes is a royal recommendation. They say that we're not going to get it, and so the block bill will never go through, and seniors will never get their money. That petty little game is what they want to play. If they are not willing to do this, then we're heading for an election. The Honourable Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, the spectre of an election is not going to stop us from delivering the goods for Quebecers. That's a bit much. A vote is a very clear thing, I would say to the Bloc leader. It's not as ambiguous as he claims. When the Bloc leader votes, he votes against lowering the retirement age to 65. He voted against increasing the GIS for poor seniors in Quebec. And when we brought in dental care, he voted against that too. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Let's repeat. The Bloc votes against all intrusions into Quebec's jurisdiction, whether that intrusion is all by itself or in an omnibus bill. C-319 is something that you guys voted for. So follow through here. Be consistent. Make sure it enters into force. Try to rectify the injustice that you yourselves created. So for once, try to vote a little bit intelligently and a little bit consistently. The Honourable Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc leader has spent his entire life putting Quebecers' CPP in danger, and he voted against lowering the retirement age to 65, and that had nothing to do with Quebec's jurisdiction. He was voting against seniors when he voted against increasing the GIS. That had nothing to do with Quebec's jurisdiction, and still he voted against it. He voted against the well-being of Quebecers. He voted in favor of poverty among seniors in Quebec. The Bloc leader needs to be a bit consistent here and take responsibility for his actions. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, taxes are going up, costs are going up, crime is up, the pressure is up on the Liberals after 9 years of this Prime Minister with the support of the Bloc. People are living in trailers, they can't afford rent. People have written in saying, how am I supposed to afford food, insurance, and so on? This is the harsh reality of 9 years of this government with its Bloc friends. Does the Bloc realize that if they keep it up, it'll mean more and more poverty for Quebecers? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no one here who believes the Conservative hypocrisy when they claim they're concerned about putting roofs over people's heads. The only thing they want to do is cut funding for construction of housing. They want to rip up all the agreements that have been signed with cities all over the country. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are going to continue building the housing people need. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and the pressure is building on the Liberal government. After 9 years, this Liberal government, supported by the Bloc, has led to disastrous consequences. People are crying for help from Sherbrooke The small food banks are starving. Imagine that, a food bank that's starving. But that's the situation. The centralizing, spendthrift Liberal government keeps on burning through money. But Canadians, Quebecers deserve to make a choice to have a common sense government as quickly as possible. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd be pleased to answer an expert on infrastructure on the path to austerity. The Conservatives, look at what they've done in the regions when it comes to fisheries. They cut 80 million to science. They cut to small ports for small craft. They voted against investments in those small ports.
Freeland got pretty tore up there earlier, though. She must be just straight up in denial. Like, what do you think Freeland actually thinks? Like, somebody says, like, facts to your face, and then you just deny them? It's very peculiar.
Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, no sooner had we freed ourselves of the NDP who supported the most disastrous government in history than we found ourselves once again caught up in a saga with the Bloc Liberal coalition. What's the point of the Bloc when they vote for $500 billion of this Prime Minister's inflationary spending and his bloated bureaucracy in Ottawa with Quebec's money, adding 100,000 more public servants to the government machine? Mr. Speaker, we saw it yesterday. There's no real difference between the Bloc and the Liberals. So who or what does the Bloc Liberal coalition serve? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, my colleague can shout as loud as he wants, but Quebecers know very well. They remember what they did when they were in power. They made cuts to science, to family supports. They cut everything they could because that's the only thing they know how to do is austerity. They don't know how to invest in the potential of Canadians, and that's precisely what they're going to do if they get another kick at the can. So Quebecers want nothing to do with the Conservatives. He can shout for all he's worth, but the Quebecers aren't listening to him. I'd just like to remind the member for Mégantic-L'Érable that after asking a question, it's important to allow someone else to answer.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc is costing Canadians a lot of money, and it's costing Quebecers a lot of money. We've witnessed the greatest expansion of the public service in history. More public services than ever, more scandals than ever. Now, they're keeping the Liberals alive. That's what the Bloc is doing. The Honourable Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, here we hear the voice of conservative austerity. People at home know what the Liberal Party has done. Investments are up. The economy is up. Quebecers know that with Liberals, we are building the future, whether it's the auto sector or elsewhere, manufacturing. We are building Canada for the 21st century. We will be there to defend Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton, Griesbach.
Over the span of 19 days, 7 Indigenous people were killed by police. Communities are disturbed, but unfortunately these tragedies are known all too well by Indigenous people. This is colonialism and systemic racism that continues to persist under consecutive governments. First Nations, Métis and Inuit have the solutions to end this violence. No more Indigenous children getting a bullet instead of help. Why won't the Minister of Public Safety act to ensure accountability and justice for these families?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the passion from my colleague, and I agree that we need to do more in this country around Indigenous policing. And that's why the Liberals, including myself, put forward a motion at the INAN Committee in April saying, let's study this. The NDP has the ability to put this forward the queue. They have the entire ability to have a unanimous motion here that says, let's address this. I'm talking about tangible solutions. I'd love to see the NDP join us with those tangible solutions and study this and hear from Indigenous leaders.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
Johannes Rivor sexually abused Inuit children in Nunavut for years. Canada refused to charge him for 30 years and he died protected. Daughter of the late Marius Tungilik has asked the RCMP for his files, but they refuse to release it. This government must honor families, especially to those who suffered during residential schools. Will the Minister of Public Safety provide the documents, or will they help to keep the files hidden from this family?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question and raising these important issues with us in this place. Ensuring that justice is done for victims and their families is crucially important. It's something I know the minister takes incredibly seriously, and we will continue to work on this specific case with her. When it comes to dealing with systemic racism in policing, this is a crucial issue that we are focused on addressing. It is something we have made progress on, but by no means is it complete. There is much more work to do, and we are committed to doing it.
All the twits can make the point.
L'Honorable Député, the Honourable Member from London West.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Immigration and Citizenship introduced Bill C-71 and asked Canadians we can never take our rights for granted. We must remain vigilant when politicians, especially when the leader of the opposition suggests that he would use a notwithstanding clause if given the chance. Like the first generation limit introduced by the Conservatives is a concrete example of them taking away the rights of Canadians. Can the Minister of Immigration and Citizenship explain to this House the importance of Bill C-71?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Citizenship and Refugees.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for her personal passion in this file. What we see and what we are debating before this House is a bill that fixes the egregious breaches of the Charter that the Conservatives, including the Leader of the Opposition, perpetrated on women, on children of people born abroad. And this is something that we as a House need to fix. It is a Charter violation. It is a particular instance of the Leader of the Opposition, supported by his previous government, in breaching Charter rights. When Canadians say there's nothing to worry about, that isn't the case. There's lots to worry about with the Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Richemont-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, what is the Bloc Québécois good for? Well, they're good for keeping the Liberals in power. They voted to save the Liberals more than 200 times. The Bloc Québécois voted for $500 billion in inflationary spending and helped to increase the ranks of the public service by 100,000. They pretend to help Quebecers, but they support this government. What did the Liberals promise the Bloc? The Honourable President of Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, we have the best public service in the world, and we are continuing to invest in Canadians, the most vulnerable, families, children, seniors. And what about the Conservatives? Every time they vote against these measures, we're here for Canadians. We're here to build a country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, Bloc, Liberal, same thing.
Hey, Cryptomaria, what's up?
They help protect the Liberals and keep them in power. So more inflationary spending, a doubling debt. So the Bloc is voting for squandering Quebecers' money. The Bloc voted for the greatest expansion of the public service ever recorded. How did the Prime Minister convince the Bloc to support this government, which has been the most disastrous and the most centralizing in Canadian history? The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, the secret agenda is coming out. People are afraid of hundreds of thousands of layoffs, and here we have the confirmation made by my colleague across the way. Their secret agenda is to fire thousands and thousands of public servants here in this area, in this region, and across Canada. We have the future to care about. That member has just shown what the Conservatives' secret game is.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, grocery prices are up, time is up. According to Feed Ontario, more than 1 million people were forced to food banks just to feed their family. This is a record-shattering increase of 25%. This stark reality is fueled by the Liberal NDP carbon tax, which is driving up grocery prices. Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. Will the Prime Minister end this suffering and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
Speaker, we all suffer when we know that some of our fellow Canadians are suffering. We've made historic investments as a government, delivering programs investing in Canadians' well-being. But let's not kid ourselves. The Conservatives would cut these very programs that Canadians are relying on. They would cut childcare. They would cut the food program for kids in school, and they would increase the retirement age. They would cut, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Yes, we will cut. We will cut the carbon tax. The government's own statistics show that more than 9 million Canadians are suffering with food insecurity, struggling to put food on the table. After 9 years, the number of Canadians that are facing food insecurity is up a staggering 111%. These aren't just statistics. These are millions of parents who can't feed their kids. This is a result of the costly Liberal carbon tax and their NDP coalition partners that are driving up the costs on farmers, on truckers, and on food production. Stick a fork in this government and call a carbon tax election.
The Honourable Minister for Families.
And we've just heard it, Mr. Speaker. They have just admitted that they would cut the very programs that Canadian families are relying on. Families that are benefiting from...
That's not what he said.
Even Lawrence is laughing at you.
Colleagues, it's very difficult for me to hear. It's very difficult for me to hear the minister respond. I'm going to give the minister 30 seconds to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And there you have it. The Conservatives have just confirmed that they will cut the programs that Canadian families are relying on. $10 a day childcare, saving families thousands of dollars. National school food program, ensuring that children are not at school hungry. Mr. Speaker, you heard it here. They plan to cut the supports that Canadian families need.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, nothing is moving in the asylum seekers file. They promised, the Liberals promised, they would do something this fall, but here we are, it's fall, and no plan. Quebec is continuing to deal with the extraordinary number of asylum seekers. Let's be clear, Quebecers will continue to do their share, but they're tired of doing it alone. When will the government come up with its plan, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, we need a plan that will work for all of Canada. There are two provinces doing more than their fair share. That's Ontario and Quebec. Other provinces have to fall in line. We have to do things on an organizational level, but we shouldn't instrumentalize certain things, as some premiers are doing. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, let's talk about those provinces who are refusing to help Quebecers. Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, Alberta, what do they have in common? Conservative premiers. And these Conservative premiers are telling Quebecers, you deal with your problems, you deal with the asylum seekers. Now, let's be clear. The Minister of Immigration is responsible for this file. But what about all these Conservative leaders who are pushing the problem over to Quebecers? The Honourable Minister, Mr. Speaker, it's clear, it's dangerous to have politicians who make hay on the backs of asylum seekers.
Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and after 9 years, time's up. Over the summer, I heard too many heartbreaking stories of folks struggling to get by. The NDP Liberals' carbon tax is making life unaffordable. Now, after voting for it 24 times, the NDP even say that they are abandoning the carbon tax. So my question to the minister is simple. Will the Liberals join their coalition partners to axe the carbon tax?
Yeah.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the price on pollution and the Canada carbon rebate are an affordability measure. 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back than they pay in the price on pollution, and the price on pollution is also an effective and efficient way to fight climate change. That's why progressives, including many who voted for the New Democratic Party in the last election, were shocked at the position that were taken by the leader of the New Democratic Party, walking away from a plan on climate change. Shame on them. They will have to explain that to their voters down the road.
He's a one-trick pony, Wilkinson.
The Honourable Member from Battle River, Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, the PBO disputes those very things. The carbon tax is by design meant to raise prices, and the consequences are devastating. In Red Deer, Alberta, a city of only 100,000 people, have seen usage skyrocket in recent years to 30,000, and this year they're on track to have 40,000 individuals that need help from this food bank. That's in a city, Mr. Speaker, of less than 100,000 people. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is simple. Will the Liberals call a carbon tax election so that Canadians can decide to axe the tax?
Yeah.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said a moment ago, the Canada carbon rebate and the price on pollution are in fact an affordability measure that help those that live on modest incomes the most. It is certainly true that 300 economists in this country have validated that to be true. The leader of the opposition and his minions across the way can make up facts, can talk about untruths, but at the end of the day, it is very clear that this is a progressive policy that helps us to fight climate change and address affordability concerns. I would ask the honourable member across the way to actually do his homework.
The Honourable Member from Battleford's Lloydminster.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs up, crimes up, and guess what? Time is up. This costly coalition is hurting Canadians. Over 9 million Canadians don't know where their next meal is going to come from. That's 111% increase of Canadians facing food insecurity. And quadrupling the carbon tax will only make things worse. Canadians cannot afford any more media stunts from this costly coalition. Will the Prime Minister just end the suffering and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families.
Mr. Speaker, as we've just returned from the summer break, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the programs that the Conservative government professes to want to cut. Over the summer, we've made a number of announcements on new affordable $10 a day childcare spots. Oh, look at this, 600 new spots in BC, 950 new spots in Manitoba. Oh, here we are, 5,000 new spots over the next year in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. And what do the Conservatives say? No more affordable childcare.
Shame.
L'honorable député de Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member For Saint-Laurent, Mr. Speaker, over the last year, Canadians expressed their concern with vehicle theft. We took their concerns to heart and acted. We have put new funding into the budget in order to fight vehicle theft. Can the Minister of Justice give us an idea of the measures taken to deal with this scourge? The Honourable Minister of Justice, Mr. Speaker, over the first half of this year, vehicle theft has fallen by 36% over last year. This follows on an increase in penalties and in the allocation of funds for border agents and for our police forces. After the cuts made by the last Conservative government, we are proud to be working for Quebecers and all Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member from Kildone and St. Paul.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, and time's up. Under their watch, women and children are being victimized and violated by criminals that under Liberal policies are being let out on bail, house arrest, and parole. And after 9 years, the results are truly terrible, Mr. Speaker. Sexual assaults, for example, are up 75%, and sexual violations against children are up 120% under their watch, Mr. Speaker. When will the Liberals put the needs of the victims first and ensure jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, we take community safety extremely seriously. It is my top priority. What we have done since I've taken office is we've increased the penalties on people who would target individuals, including people who target people's automobiles. We have funded police to the tune of $161 million to assist them in their important work. What I can advise the member opposite is three important things. The people who are making decisions on bail are provincially appointed justices of the peace or provincial judges. The people who decide to appeal decisions on bail are provincial crown attorneys. And the people who decide whether offenders have a place to go when they're denied bail, those are provincial correctional facilities. Talk to the provinces.
The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes up, costs up, crime's up, time's up. And so are job losses because of this incompetent Liberal fisheries minister. She doesn't listen to Atlantic Canada's fishing communities. The industry is left in the dark. Even former DFO scientists say she's playing politics with lives and livelihoods. In July, the fisheries minister cut the Bay of Fundy herring quota by 24%. The result, over 100 job losses. Will she do her job and restore these fish, reverse the cuts?
Then I had
the Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to assure my colleague that we have very close relationships with fishers, and for years now we have noted that herring stocks are suffering in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. But he should think about shrimp in the St. Lawrence. We have helped in this area, contrary to the Conservatives, who would fish until every species is extinct. The herring stock has fallen, but we are not fishing it as much in order to conserve it.
The honourable member for colleagues. The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, fisheries crime is up, and the time is up. The situation in Nova Scotia's fishing communities, which has previously been described as lawlessness, continues to deteriorate. In spite of repeated warnings, the incompetent Minister of Fisheries and Oceans refuses to do anything. There is significant concern that the situation will spiral out of control. When will this woefully inadequate minister realize the importance of the Atlantic Canadian fishery and the very real threat to lives and livelihoods and do her job?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that my colleague across the way has a very poor memory. We have only to think of the moratorium on deepwater fish and about what happened to shrimp last winter. It was catastrophic for our regions. Climate change in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, which is affecting all fish stocks. It's a real shame what I'm hearing across the way. And yet I'm not surprised because the conservatives don't believe in climate change. We will make those decisions that are best for the industry.
Member from Kings Heads.
Speaker, this summer millions of Canadians tuned in to the CBC and Radio-Canada to cheer on Team Canada at the Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris. Our athletes pushed limits, set new records, and brought us all together via the power of sport. In King's Hands, we are deeply proud of the Kennecook Kid, Wyatt Sanford, who won Canada's first Olympic bronze medal since 1996 when he took home the bronze. I even had the chance to spar and throw punches with him and the Prime Minister this summer. Can the Minister of Sport let this House know how we're supporting athletes like Wyatt so they can keep representing Canada with pride and excellence?
The Honourable Minister of Sport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Canadians from coast to coast to coast proudly celebrated the exceptional performances of Team Canada this past summer. Canadians won a record number of medals, inspired the next generation of Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and made us deeply proud. Our government supports athletes. We increased the amounts of the Athlete Assistance Program, which supports over 1,800 athletes monthly in 94 disciplines. Mr. Speaker, our athletes dream big and work hard, and we've got the results to prove it.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, $200 a month is not enough to live on. Yet that's what the Prime Minister has decided is enough for people with disabilities.
Shame.
While he caves to rich CEOs, he fails to protect the human rights of Canadians. And then there's the Conservatives, who always cut the supports people need.
Yep.
Both the Liberals and the Conservatives care more about their rich corporate donors than they do about Canadians. When will the Liberals get real and increase the Canada Disability Benefit and respect Canadians with disabilities?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister for Youth, Diversity and Disabilities.
Mr. Speaker, we put forward over $6 billion to create the first ever Canada Disability Benefit. But Mr. Speaker, we won't take any lessons from the NDP, who has started to take orders from the Conservative Party and abandon their commitments to delivering progressive policies. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're focused on delivering this historic benefit to Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, the City of Windsor is tired of being abused by this Liberal government when it comes to the border. A private American billionaire now wants to run hazardous material on the Ambassador Bridge. This is bad for the environment, bad for the economy, and an unnecessary risk for public safety. The Liberals tried passing the buck to the province, but Doug Ford doesn't care. My community deserves answers and a government that stands up for them, not the American billionaire who owns the bridge. Will the Liberals stop caving to the billionaires and put an end to this disaster waiting to happen?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell the member what the Windsor is about. Windsor is about a revival, Mr. Speaker. With the investment we brought in Windsor, Windsor will never look the same again, Mr. Speaker. We have brought generational investment in this town. We have given hope to people. We are providing opportunities. We're providing training for the people. Windsor will be at the center again of the auto sector, Mr. Speaker. And this is thanks to a Liberal government and this team, Mr. Speaker. We should all cheer up for Canadians, cheer up for Windsor, and cheer up for the auto workers in this country.
Yeah, we cheer for them.
Colleagues, and so brings to an end of oral questions. It being...
All right, gang. So that is going to wrap up today's episode. It's been a lot of fun. I've got a couple of videos that we'll show, like, for an outro. There's a lot of things going on here. just trying to learn how to do the channel and make it the best experience for people to watch, like question period in the afternoon. I will be doing like an hour like lead-in show to the live question period. So stay tuned for that. I'll be here every day. The question periods will be here. You can check, like it might be an hour before the question period. It might be a half hour, but I'm always going to be here before the question period. I'd like to thank Sheila Hall, my man Captain Kirk, Mr. Pickles, Darren Dimebags, who's busy today, but and thank all the people that have returned and the new viewers that are watching. Let me know in the comments what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see, all these kinds of things. Because if I don't know, I don't know. And that is pretty much it. Like, it is a crazy time in Canadian politics. I don't do too much commentary on here because my commentary is leaning towards change, and that is not something that is promoted by Big Brother YT or GOO right now. Like, they don't push like for you know, the changes that we want to see. Anyhow, got a couple of other videos that we do have here ready to show, and we're going to go out on that. Again, I showed these yesterday, the same ones. I'll try to keep this stuff somewhat fresh. This is a busy thing to be doing, like, or can be at sometimes. Anyhow, we're out. You guys have a good
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The ones that work you know I am. I am Canadian. Come on! I love this country where I am. This land is where I make my stand. No other route gets through the land.
The one we call Canadian. Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
You know I am Canadian. I am.
And you will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. I'd also like to remind all members of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and all comments
Sorry,
should be
gang, I
addressed
kind
through
of
the
screwed
chair.
up there at the end.
And members...
Whoops, trying to do too many things at once. We're out for today. Actually, we're putting it back. We're going to watch that stuff again because it is fun. Gets me pumped up, like it really does. Yeah.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The ones that work
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.
Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Tip tap, pitter pat, granny cat too. Rooty toot, kimble, loopy loo. Boppity stoppity, romper room. Romper room and friends.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.